Welcome to another episode of LogisticsSales.com, where today we'll be discussing creating a value proposition. So stick around and let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of LogisticsSales.com. I'm your host, Dean, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Damon and Gail.
Hello, hello.
So we're on the segment of establishing sustainable relationships still, and today we're going to be talking about creating a value proposition. Our last episode, we discussed defining a clear objective, and that helps you set your intentions and plan your interactions to give you clarity on what you want from your relationship. Today, with value propositions, we'll discuss what it is and why it's so important. So, what is a value proposition? It's a clear and compelling description of your business and how it meets the needs of your customers, basically highlighting the issues that they need addressed. And when you can approach them and give that to them in your value proposition, it basically sets a standard for why you want to work with a company like yourself. So a good example in trucking is some companies experience service failures, maybe delays due to poorly maintained equipment. Part of our value proposition is always highlighting our newer equipment that is continuously maintained with our on-site mechanics, and it helps prevent those unnecessary delays and due to service breakdowns with the equipment. So, Gail, right now, creating a value proposition to your customer, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, well, when it comes to creating a value proposition, it's basically just having an understanding of what it is that you're going to offer them and how it's going to benefit or value them. So we've kind of developed a couple simple steps to give you an idea of how you're going to go ahead and develop your own value proposition. And so let's get started and let's go into them and actually see how you're going to develop that value proposition.
And Gail, just before you start, I think one thing that's important for maybe our viewers to understand is when we create a value proposition, where is the value coming from? And just remember, if you're watching this, the value is sometimes just even you. And saying, okay, well, why would somebody want to work with myself? What do I bring to that table? Is it a skill set? Is it some sort of value that someone else needs or wants? And so the value, when you kind of listen to some of these examples, I would want you as a viewer to really take that into consideration and say, you know, like even if it's something like this mouse, right? And if there's 3 suppliers selling the same thing, how do you create value in the one that you're selling to actually have that thing sell to somebody else versus them just going to, you know, like a random website and purchasing it from any generic company, right? So there's always a value proposition that we can add to add value to any sale.
Thanks, Damon. And I think that's really important to just give you that visual of how you kind of go about creating that value proposition. But for you guys, so the first step that you're going to want to follow is knowing your ideal customer. You have to have a very, very black and white idea of who that specific customer is that's going to want to purchase or buy that product or service that you're selling. In the trucking industry, obviously it's finding somebody who needs the service of moving goods to and from, but then that really does start to narrow down to certain niches. So having a good understanding and an ironclad client profile is going to give you an idea of how you're going to structure and how you're going to market that value proposition. And so if you want to refer back to our previous episode, it was in the Crafting the Client Profile series. We actually have an episode on specifically the client profile. If you aren't sure of what your client profile is, go back and rewatch that video and draft out your client profile so that you have an idea of what you are going after. And it's going to give you an understanding of what products and services that ideal customer is looking for and how your product and service is going to align with their needs. And then you can start building out that value proposition.
And I think that's also like becoming that expert in your field. It's always that research component that we talk about so many times. Is that research component makes you so valuable because you get something to say, you understand things better. It makes you better than the person that's to your left or right because you've done the work. And I think, that's something that we always repeat in our program is that research and making you become that expert. So for whatever you're selling or doing, you get that value for what you put in.
Exactly. And we've stressed it 100 times, and it's because it is so vitally important. You have to have this clear understanding. You want to be that expert in your field. And the only way you're going to get there is becoming an expert by doing the research, by doing the work, and putting the time in to get to that level. We all start somewhere. So if you're not already there, just remember, you have to start at a beginner's pace, and then you go and you continue to learn, you build off your skill sets until eventually you are that expert that you were taking advice from at the beginning.
And sometimes, Gail, that the step is so simple, but so many people tend to skip it. And sometimes it's as simple as just reading one paragraph, or spending an hour just to take a look through some information, and just trying to understand that information. Ask questions to your peers, ask questions to the people that you work with, ask people questions that you may be selling to potentially. But there's so many ways to just gain that knowledge. It's such a small step, but so many people just tend to miss it just to go straight for the sale.
Exactly. Now, the reason why that's so important is going to lead us right into step number 2, which is matching your benefits to the needs of your customers. So once you are able to understand what kind of problems they're facing, what challenges they're going through, what gaps in their current suppliers or their current services are missing, then you can start to match them with whatever products or services that we provide. So by having an understanding of what your customer is going through, what challenges they're facing, the things that they're trying to solve, you can begin to fill those gaps with your product and your service to be able to say, hey, I'm the person that you need in order to get this job done. And remember that it doesn't have to necessarily be a specific feature or a benefit. Sometimes that solution is literally you being able to say, I can provide you that customer service. I can be the person that you can rely on. I am the expert that you're looking for is all that they're looking for. So having yourself as one of that value add and building yourself into that value proposition is extremely important for making it not just surface level, but making it more of a personal connection and building that relationship.
Yeah, you've both said it now too, and it stresses the importance where sometimes it can be just you, and that's how important you are. And of course, timing's important, but going through all of this, it's understanding that when you're doing all those little things, it's finding somebody that actually wants to take the time to work with you because you're putting in the time. And it's once you get that value proposition, you want it down cold too, because it doesn't want to be, like you're reading from a book or anything. It's just you're speaking from the heart. And if you're truly coming from a place of service and you put in the work, that value proposition is going to be second nature. It should be cold. So when they hear it, they're actually hearing the things they need to hear, and you're selling them the services that you have or the product that you have just by mere having that proposition down pat.
Exactly. Thanks, Dean. Now we're getting into step number 3, which all of this you'll notice is tying in together. A lot of them overlap right into each other, but number 3 is to be specific and to be unique. This is where you get to let your creativity shine, you get to let your personality come forward, and that's what's going to build that personal interaction. So like we said, do your research, know what you're talking about, go into those conversations well versed and well understood so that you can have those dynamic conversations that are not just, them listening and you talking or vice versa. It's a two-way street. It's communication. Then you also need to understand the prospect's business and how your product and service will provide a solution to them. So we do have a couple of examples specifically in the supply chain industry. I mean, we are LogisticsSales for a reason. So I just wanted to go over a couple of them to give you guys an idea of potentially, some of those scenarios. So for example, what if they have high claims ratios from improper temperatures while shipping their temperature sensitive products? Those are potentially areas where you can use them in your value proposition to push forward, hey, we have temperature tracking in our trailers. We have all of these other features. We have newer equipment that make sure that the temperature is maintained throughout the duration of the transit. So all of these little things can get built into your value proposition. But remember that they're very specific. If it's a company that doesn't care for temperature specifications, then that's not going to be what you build into that value proposition.
Gail, I think it's important to note then when you're dealing with your ideal clients or your customer, is it true that your value proposition can change from customer to customer based on their needs?
100%. When you are dealing with different customers, even customers in the same industry and field, they're all going to have slightly different variations of what you're going to propose in that value proposition. You might find two almost identical companies, but with different names. One values service and one values price, or one values speed and reliability, and the other values customer service and having that personal connection. So you have to kind of assess not just the company, but also the people that you're interacting with, what's important to them.
And so maybe to explain to the viewers, like, what does that look like in a real life situation? And just in training the other day, like, we were working with one of our students, and it was just about how he was following up. And it was about listening to that client to be like, okay, hey, you know what can I use from that previous conversation to move this service or product forward in the future? And so it's that listening component that becomes so key. And this is what makes you kind of unique and very specific, is because if you told me something and I repeat to you what you told me, now I sound a lot more credible because I've been listening to you, and we're building a connection because you're like, okay, well, you understand me. You actually paid attention to what I was saying. And so something is just something as simple as just listening and repeating back to the customer, like, oh, well, I get you. You know, I understand what you're telling me, and I understand that this is what your concerns are. This is where, you're looking for extra service in this area. And if you're willing to just listen and just repeat and give back solutions based on what you're listening to, that's perfect. And that's all it really is.
Yeah, I would say that compassion and empathy in sales is a highly underrated skill that most people don't utilize, but it is so important, and it can actually go that extra step further to seal in that deal. So don't forget to, listen with compassion to make sure that you're understanding the pain points of your customer, and just have that dynamic conversation where you can hear what is troubling them, what they're going through. A couple other scenarios as well is if you have a customer who's having trouble tracking loads or getting updates, maybe for them that value proposition is that reliability in service and that communication, knowing that they have somebody that's available 24/7 to answer their questions, having a dedicated customer service rep. And for someone in that case, that connection point, you can tell just based off of the pain point that they're having, is extremely important. So again, that listening factor really starts to come into play.
I think it's really important too, when you're talking to your customer or your prospect, is have relatable experiences to give them. If you have a story, if they're worried about tracking, like Gail was just talking about, and you could highlight another customer of yours where they have the same tracking requirements, and you could say, actually, one of our customers right now is very happy with this part of our tracking protocol, and it enforces your value proposition to them and gives them those reasons why. Because again, the value proposition is giving them the information they needs that separates you from the other potential competitors, and why they should work with you.
I actually have a really good example for that one, actually, Dean. I have a customer myself that is extremely, extremely important that they don't have breakdowns or delays in their transit times. It's so, so vital. Their product is extremely sensitive. It has to be in stores when they need it there, or they get penalized. And so for us, we've been running their shipments very successfully over the last 2 years. And just last week, we had our first breakdown. And so that was the only one that we've had in a 2-year period of doing multiple loads every week. And so for them, it was that ability to say, hey, look, we can move shipments for you, and we can make sure that they're going to get there on time, reliably. And, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, one breakdown in 2 years is very, very minimal. But some of the companies out there, you'll find that, if they are using older equipment, or if they're not as committed to their ability to get things there on time, they may not honor those on-time deliveries. So, that was one of those things that I'll use in future conversations when somebody says, oh, on-time delivery is really important to me. That'll be a story that I tell. So you can utilize those stories and those interactions as they come into your repertoire and that you come into your book of business, and start using them on your sales moving forward.
So I think you forgot to mention that one breakdown was only a 3-hour delay.
Yes.
So if you're listening to this and you're like, what is a breakdown? It's a truck shipment breaking down and having someone to recover it. But that's the value, right? The value is how quickly do you recover, and how quickly can you move forward if something does happen. And that's the level of service, right? So again, is that down to the individual? Like, how well do you understand your customer? How well do you understand their needs, that this shipment has to get going and need to start working on it immediately? Or are you the type of person that steps in right away, or do you wait? right? Hey, maybe we'll wait till that truck gets into the service repair bay. Maybe we'll wait to get some reports back. Maybe da 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 da. You know, it could be there could be so many waiting periods. Oh, let's wait till tomorrow to see what happens. But there's so many of these situations where, again, you know, you are the differentiator between finding out whether, you know, this shipment makes it on time, or you're gonna take a delay and just kind of put your hands up and sit back and let someone else deal with it. And you know, Dean, you talked about the experiences, even for the person that's new, right? Because we have probably a lot of new listeners listening to our program, and when we have new listeners, they don't have to be your stories, right? If you don't have personal experiences yet with customers and you haven't built, you know, 1-2 year relationships like what Gail was talking about, just know that you can share stories from your coworkers, right? Just like I knew Gail's story, right? She was talking about her story. I had details about it. I'm like, oh, hey, hold on. I know that. Is it my customer experience? No, it's hers, right? She had that experience, but she shared it with me. And then I can use that experience with anyone I'm speaking to. And so even if you don't have coworkers and you're working by yourself, just understand that you can read articles and you can read, there's so many white papers about situations that companies have been in and how they've overcome those situations and how they succeeded. So again, you know, just giving people that hope, just knowing that you can do the research and get that information. Anyone can do this.
Exactly. Thanks very much, Damon. I knew I'd forgotten something important in that story. There's also other things too that you can also start to leverage as well. Like one thing that we do quite frequently is when customers are experiencing capacity constraints, we actually use that not just to leverage them into becoming a customer, but also into leveraging a long-term portion of their business. You know, if we have somebody who says, you know, I have a hard time getting trucks when the season gets busy, all of a sudden all my carriers say, hey, I have nothing available. We'll say, you know what, that's where we come in. That's where we specialize. Our job is to come in when we have a full year-round customer and we provide them service year-round. If you are locked in with us for a year period, we'll make sure that you have the equipment provided. And so we can use that in our value propositions to build off of those customers and to build not just that reliability, but also that trust factor and saying, look, we got your back. We understand this is a pain point for you, but we've got a solution, but it's going to take that give and take. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more today and in future episodes as well. And then the final step here is step number 4, which is test and restructure your value proposition as needed. As we mentioned, it's going to differ from customer to customer already, but you also want to try and look at it from almost like a marketing perspective. You want to see, are you marketing your business at a high level? Is your website looking really refined? Does it look like it's got all of the information that your customers are going to want to see? I mean, I know in our industry, there are a lot of companies out there that their websites look very cookie cutter. Not all of them are fully developed. There's not a lot of information. You want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, not just on that conversational level, but what marketing's out there. Do you need to revamp your website? Do you want to start doing some more social media, like on LinkedIn, and posting more informationals and newsletters and things like that that are going to provide value to people? And that's the most important part. Everything that you do needs to be providing value.
Yeah, I think it's really important to track not just technology, but the beating heart of the business or industry you're working in. Once you have your finger on the pulse and you know exactly what's happening, you could move and modify your value proposition as needed. You know, sometimes there's peak seasons. You want to highlight certain things of your value proposition to your customer that they would need to address their concerns about peak seasons. And other times there might be weekend or daily, weekly constraints that they might encounter that you just might have the answer for. So like anything, whether it's yourself, your business, your friendships, it's always a work in progress, and you should always be trying to improve. And then the really cool thing about your value proposition is it's, you know, you obviously want to track your successes, but you want to track your failures as well. And you want to learn from those failures. And when you find a success, the really cool thing about a successful value proposition is it can be duplicated, and it can go to another customer and another customer if you do the work and put the work in that you need to do.
And who doesn't love that story about, you know, when you get knocked down and if it's a failure, it's all about how you come back from that, right? It's like people just want to know, like, hey, are you able to bounce back? Hey, that's okay. You know, breakdowns happen. Are you able to bounce back? Yeah, and that's all it is, right? People love those stories.
And I'd say in sales, that's probably like the number one factor that gets people to quit doing sales and to walk away, is that failure, that repetitive over and over again. It didn't work. This person didn't buy my product. They didn't decide to go with us for our service provider. But it's how you get back up. If you continue, I guarantee anyone who just continues to push and push and push and push, eventually you will land that customer, and then you will land another and another and another. It's all about perseverance in sales. If you can't persevere, that's where you're going to have a hard time. But everybody has the capacity to, and we believe in all of you being able to have that in you and to go forward and to keep pushing past those failures until you get that first win. And I guarantee that's not going to be the first one you get or the only one you get.
Yeah, and this goes right into like, if you're not dealing with customers, maybe you're working at a job and you're dealing with your employer. The same principles kind of apply here, right? It's understanding like what does your employer want? What does he want and need? Understanding their wants and needs, and what they want from you. If you're working there, but it's also understanding, okay, well, how can I create a value proposition for my employer? It's typically when you're looking for that raise, right? And you're saying, okay, well, or you're even looking for a job. Right? And there's so many different ways to kind of carry this forward. When you're working with direct employers, you can also work in situations where you can provide a value proposition to even take over their business one day, right? If you're looking to, obtain a business or get into a business for yourself, again, you're going to have to create some sort of value proposition. Someone's going to have to see something inside of you to be able to elevate you to that level. And you're going to have to want it first yourself. And this is, again, the reason for our program is how do we expand your mindset? How do we take what you know today and what's around you already, and for you to see the opportunities in what's around you instead of having perceived notions that, hey, if I work hard, maybe one day the employer is going to give me a raise by himself, and you could sit there and keep waiting for any time that you're able to level up in a company. Or you can start making it happen by showing like, hey, you know what? Let me go volunteer. Let me take on the next project. Let me keep building my value. Who else can I gain value from? But, going back to the principles that you were talking about, Gail, it's, know what the employer wants, right? First, understand him and understand or her, but understand that company and understand like what is it that they're looking for in their employees and how can I create that value for them? Then it's like also matching it up with what you want. If you're sometimes money's not everything. It's can I get flexibility? Am I able to, work from home when needed? Can I get more vacation time to spend the summer with my children or whatever it may be? But, it's also understanding what you want and if it can match up with what the employer wants. And sometimes we see a situation where, an employer can't really afford the employee. But if an employee goes, hey, you know what? I could probably do the same work in about half the time. How about we work out a negotiation, or my value proposition would be, hey, if you want to pay for my skill sets, I wouldn't really word it like that, but at least say, if you're looking for someone that's looking to fulfill this type of role for your company, hey, maybe I can do that for you. And maybe we could do it in a way where it's not going to cost you as much because I know you can't really afford, this big of a salary. But hey, if I work those reduced hours and I'm able to, pump out this certain amount of volume for you, is that something that would work great for you? And so again, just understanding the other side of it would be able to help you, again, obtain what you want. And if it's, you can work out commission structures, you can work out different benefits. And so again, it's whatever you're able to be creative about. And this is what we talk about is like, be unique, be specific. Understand what you want first, right? A lot of people just go into a conversation with the employer and just say, I need a raise. Like the common one that we hear about nowadays is, everything's going up in price and I just need more money. And so how do you think that sounds to an employer, right? When everyone comes out and everyone needs more money, like who doesn't?
And just to add a different perspective on that, if somebody's going to an employer saying, hey, I need a raise because everything's going up in price, cost of living has increased, what do you think that employer is feeling? Most likely, if everything's gone up in price for you, that employer is feeling those same pain points. They're going, oh my goodness, fuel's more expensive, keeping the lights on is more expensive, everyone wants a raise in my office. It's going to be something that they're also experiencing. So keep that in mind when you go in, and it gives you that idea, okay, if I want this raise, how am I going to convince my employer that it is justified and that I deserve to get this raise? And you're gonna have to put something out to get something back. They say that you don't receive if you don't ask, but you should also keep in mind that you have to also be willing to work for it.
For sure, and that's such a great point, Gail. There's so many ways that you can create value in a company. Something that we do in transportation, we look at people's safety plans. We try to reduce their insurance premiums. You could work with somebody with their health and dental benefits. There's so many aspects. Revenue is a big one, right? Even when it comes to revenue or even managing teams, there's so many options that are available for anyone that wants to really level up in a company. It's who's willing to take on extra projects, right? And who's willing to figure out different ways to generate revenue for the same product, right? How do we find different avenues? How do we do different marketing strategies? But there's whatever your skill set is something that you want to take a look at and say, what do I enjoy doing? And sometimes like being a really good trainer or being a really good communicator and say, hey, you know what, maybe I'll help out with producing content to train our employees. Maybe I'm really good at policy writing, so I'm going to do this write-ups that's going to help our company, with X, Y, Z. And again, so many different ways that you could show value in a company that, again, it's just a matter of what you could think of and be able to express to somebody or show somebody.
Yeah, there's a limitless pool of different things that you can go and use for leverage when you're trying to negotiate with an employer or in sales as well. But keep that in mind. It could be something as simple as, a department is a little bit short staffed. Maybe your job doesn't even have much to do with them, but offering, hey, can I go ahead and cross train so that if you guys need additional support, if you guys are down a person, if somebody goes on vacation, I can offer you that additional support. Just even little things like that aren't going to take like a huge amount of learning curve and whatnot to get there. There are so many options to go forward and say, hey, this is what I want, but this is what I'm willing to put out in order to get it.
Yeah, and just going back to like the opportunities to acquire businesses as well. This is a big one, and I really, when it comes to like being unique, and we see this happen a lot of times. It's very common in accounting offices or lawyer offices is that when one of the employees starts raising to a certain level, they'll just make them a partner because it's mutually beneficial to both parties. And understanding like, okay, what does an employer go through, right? And there could be employers that could be facing bankruptcy. There could be employers that may want to retire. There may be a whole bunch of different situations, right? Somebody may get sick in their family, and it's like a matter of, okay, can they take time off? A lot of people that are in small to medium-sized businesses have a hard time taking time off because they're so invested into their own business that they can't leave for the fear that the business may not survive. And so when you can understand some of these concepts, or where you start recognizing, what is my employer going through, and start offering those solutions, I'm sure a lot of employers are open to, percentage splits, ownership transfers, seller financing situations where they may give you the business if you're able to, give them something back in return, right? So maybe a company may already be profitable, but you say, hey, you know what? I know you're looking to retire, and hey, if I can run your business for you and show you that I can do it and manage your business, maybe we can work out something that's a long-term plan where maybe there's a succession period of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be. But maybe there's a succession period that if I obtain A, B, and C for you, that eventually I can start owning your business. And we see this happen countless numbers of times, and it's something that I would always encourage people. But again, make sure that you show value first, right? Put the work in first, then make the claims. You always have to back it up with something. It's the same thing like when we talk about walking into an employer's office and asking for a raise. Well, he's already paying you for what you're already doing. What is the raise really for, right? So if you're looking for something from that side, it's always thinking about what can I offer from my side, and not just a take situation. So again, make those win-win combinations, and it's better for everyone in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's really important to always give before you ask. Seems to be a lot more successful at that rate than just give me. So now we're going to talk about how do you propose your value proposition to your customer. Obviously through, learning the skill and gaining the experience. It's really, when you hear value proposition, it's basically your elevator pitch of everything you can do and why it's important for them to hear what you have to say in a small amount of time to gain their attention to get to that next step and the next step and close the deal and become partners and build this long-lasting relationship, which is crucial. But I think strategically what you need to also try and do with your value proposition is you want to get it in knowing what their needs are, because right off the hop, if you've been doing your research, who your ideal client is. You've already know what they need to hear. And why you want to work with them is because you think you can make their life easier and you provide that service and you can get that across. But I think strategically, you want to do it throughout the conversation. It's just not, here's my value proposition, hear it and let's go. It's nice for them to hear it over and over and over if it's a certain want that they have. If it's expedited shipping, for example, and that they have their product just has to, there's that absolutely positively has to get there the day before yesterday, you can say, well, there's a synergy here. It's great because we specialize in expedited, services. So, already there's a fit there. There's an opportunity for you. But there's nothing worse when they, if you're calling a customer, I can promise you're not the only one calling. You're not the only one that wants to work with them. And you have to find little ways to separate yourself. It's like how Gail was saying, you want to do the little things and going, above and beyond and showing them why you are part of the reason why they should, want to work with you and build this relationship. But I think when they pick up the phone and they're hearing somebody telling them what they should do, you're probably not going to get the greatest response. So, going back to what Dane was saying, you want to give them something. And of course, coming from that place of service is very important. And they'll feel that and they'll know that. And then you get the opportunity, to get it in there. And a really good skill, if you can, practice at it and you hone it, is to be able to get them to visualize themselves why it's so important that if I work with this partner, this is going to happen. And then you almost see them, relaxing because part of their pain points are starting to disappear, because if I make this decision, we've said this in other episodes too, there's nothing better than having a partner of yours tell you after you've worked with them for a long time, why did I do this sooner? And that's a huge win.
Yeah, and I would also say it's super important to be able to visualize that relationship that you're building with that customer, that potential partnership that you are creating. Because once you have that visualization, you can take that sales script and you can check it right out the window because you don't need it anymore. You already know what that customer needs and how you're going to fit in to their business and to making it better. So check that script out, and then you can just start having those conversations and you can build off of that. And that's what makes it a lot more genuine, a lot more dynamic. And you start to build that trust and that reliability and that bond, that connection.
All great points, and thank you so much, Gail. You're one of the experts at it. I've loved watching you do those little things, to walk into a customer's office and be able to, pick certain things out. To just shows them how much you care. So I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, Dean. Now, our wonderful viewers, you thought you got away without a worksheet today, but we do have one for you here. So go ahead and click that one and open it up here. The reason we waited till the end today is because we wanted you to go through the whole episode and hear how a value proposition works before you go in and start actually working on the worksheet. There's only 3 questions for this one, but they are going to put you to work. So the first question here is create a scenario either between yourself or a potential customer and an employer, and come up with a value proposition and try to highlight a minimum of 5 values that you would be offering them in that proposition. It's a good brainstorming. Go through and say, okay, what do I have to offer? What would that person want from me? And if you have a specific customer in mind, there might be specific things that are important to them, but maybe it's just something that you make off the top of your head, but try and visualize what could you offer that person? What is going to make them say, this is the person that I need to work with. The next question, number 2, is where in your life right now could you create 3 unique value propositions, and what would they be? This could be as simple as why your spouse should do the dishes and what they get out of it. And you can also relate it to business opportunities, employer interactions, friendships, whatever you have going on. There are so many different value propositions that we make in our everyday life, from business to personal. So go through and write down 3 different value propositions that you could make in your everyday life. And then number 3, now that you've learned how to create a value proposition, let's put those skills to work. If you're currently working, do you think you could create a value proposition and show your employer to get a raise? Or if you're unemployed, create a value proposition to get the job? So go through and write that value proposition, whether you're employed or unemployed. Write a proposition that you would say to your employer to get the raise that you're looking for, or the promotion, or to get the job if you're looking for one. And I think these are going to give you a great idea of how to write a value proposition, how to put it together, and how to add value to those conversations.
For sure. I think we just want to see like the viewers really progress. It's like, what are those action steps that you could take to create that value? Like there's and what we want you to see is what do you have to offer? And as we talk, what we're trying to do is we're trying to trigger things within your situation that you're going to start saying, yeah, I could do that. Yes, I can do that. Oh yeah, that's another way I could add value. I never knew that was even valuable. Wow, maybe I should try more of that, or make it an intention. And saying the intention is going to get you further and further. The more you are on this journey, you're going to realize that, in your career, what opportunities exist if you just open up your mind to it.
I love it. And don't be afraid to reach out to us. Let us know how you made out. Gail put this little challenge out there to see if you can, create the value proposition you need to, get the job, or get the raise, or get that customer. Send us your messages. Keep us posted. We love to see how you are moving along in this journey. And I hope you can see that knowing your value proposition is going to be a significant advantage over your competitors if you're able to deliver it properly. And it's not just the initial interaction, but it's going to get you all the way to that, negotiating the terms of that next big deal. Which brings us to our next episode. Will be negotiating mutually benefit terms. So we hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Until then, take care, and best of luck.
Bye, everyone.